Guys, I promise I'd tell some funny fight stories. So here's the first one. Now, I thought I'd start with a not so serious one in the grand scheme of things, just as a warm-up. So let me know what you think about my storytelling. Let me know how I can improve on this format, if there's any way I can improve on it. Obviously, this is a chat channel. It's kind of like a podcast channel, so I'm not going to put too many edits. I'm not going to animate it, although maybe in the future I could. But right now, I don't plan on doing that, so let's just make that clear. But if there's anything flow-wise or detail-wise that you think I'm missing / should add, please let me know. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about this. When I was in elementary school in the Chicago area, I had this really good friend named Tom. Really funny, right? Jerry. Actually, back then, I didn't go by Jerry. So the Tom and Jerry thing never came about, but it's so funny that later on I would go by Jerry, and it seems like that was a seed planted because I had a friend named Tom. Tom was a Korean. There's basically two types of Koreans. Again, I'm simplifying, but just for the sake of the story. There's the type that's like really posh, really from a lot of money. A lot of the South Koreans that left Korea and came and settled here have a lot of money, right? There's that type of Korean. And then there's the type that's probably parent was in the military, parent pounding the alcohol, just very, very tough type of upbringing. And Tom was the latter. Tom, you could tell his dad probably beat the shit out of him at home and stuff like that. Tom and I bonded because, I had pretty shitty parents growing up. So me and him, we could just tell we had this kind of don't mess with us / us against the world type of mentality. So Tom and I would play together and we would just mess with people. It was just what kids who grow up in bad households tend to do, right? So I remember I always was slightly scared of Tom because he just had that if you mess with him, he's going to fight you type of thing. So Tom would go mess with people older than us too. He was crazy. I just remember one time me and him were again messing with some of these older kids who probably were in his neighborhood. That's why we were messing with him. And it got to the point where we were about to fight, right? And I just, by instinct, I'm like, I can't, even with Tom, I can't beat up these big kids. So I started going up the slide, right? I'm trying to hide myself. And one of the big kids came up and before I could escape, he grabbed me by the leg and pulled me down from the slide. Thank goodness nothing happened afterwards because he was mostly mad at Tom for always messing with him, right? But still, he gave me a warning, like, I'm so big, I could pull you down from the slide before you climb to safety. Like most friends, you're going to have conflicts, right? And for those of you who grew up before the 2010s, you guys know guys grew up fighting each other. It's just part of how life was. I'm not making a judgment as to whether society is going in the right direction or wrong direction. It's just changed. A lot of my audiences have never gotten into fights. Boggles my mind because growing up, it's like as a boy, even if you weren't trying, you'd probably get into a fight once a month. But for me, since I was trying, I get into a fight almost every day. It's just how I was. So one day, Tom was in a bad mood, and I could tell. I get a feeling, just sixth sense, he's probably going to try to fight me today. And I still don't know why he was in a bad mood that day, but he was trying to fight me that day. During recess, it was one of the few times I purposely avoided him. Usually I played with Tom, and there's another kid named Charlie that sometimes would play with us. Charlie was a white kid. And sometimes I play with this older kid named Steve. So it's mostly us. Sometimes this other white kid named Jeremy would play with us. And then sometimes there's this little fat white kid named Bobby that would play with us. And there's this Indian kid, I never remembered his name, but the Indian kid would play with us too. This time, because I was so desperate to try to get out of Tom's path, I went to the closest group of people I could find, which they were the popular kids in my class. I never played with them because I never thought I was a popular kid. I never thought I fit in that way. But very surprisingly, those kids let me play with them. So I was playing with the quote-unquote popular kids in my class, and Tom was just coming over messing with me. And not only was he messing with me, but he would continue messing with me even when I was trying to ignore him. I think he was trying to bring over one of the big kids. He kept usually bringing me along to mess with them. He was trying to bring them over to mess with me. So I remember he was speaking in Korean. Tom was fluent in Korean. So obviously he was an immigrant kid like me. He wasn't like, there was another kid named Kevin. Kevin grew up in Chicago, right? Tom probably immigrated to Chicago from Korea just around the same time I immigrated from China. So Tom was speaking in Korean to one of these older kids, saying something about me, trying to mess with me. And then one thing led to another. I realized, I guess I'm going to have to fight him because he's not going to stop messing with me. And these quote-unquote popular kids didn't know me enough to try to stand up for me. They just let me play with them. But like they weren't like, oh yeah, Jerry's our bro. You're messing with him. You're messing with us. Eventually, Tom and I just started swinging at each other. And I'm telling you, I'm not winning this fight. This is one of those reasons. You see the title, you're going to probably understand why I did this, right? So I am not winning this fight at all. Tom just has more anger than me. I was angry, but I wasn't as able to express it in a fighting form. I did it more, and I'm not proud of this. I did it more in that B-U-L-L-Y word. I did more of that. There's different types of mentalities. He just wanted to fight instead of pick on someone, which is how I usually expressed my anger. Tom was just beating me, man. I would land a hit on him, but he would land like 3 hits on me, right? That's how fights go. So I know I was losing. At one point, I remember Tom kicked me so hard, and it almost hit me in the groin. But instead, it landed right here near the appendix. And I remember it hurt so much. I'm like, wow, that hurts as much as getting kicked in the groin. But then as I'm hurting, I remember thinking, man, I'm glad it wasn't the groin, because man, it would have dropped me if it were the groin. I don't remember how long the fight lasted. This is a long time ago. But eventually the teacher comes over and stops us. And obviously the teacher can tell that I'm more hurt. So obviously she could tell that Tom was the one winning, and she could just tell by Tom's anger that Tom was probably the one that started it, right? So this is the moment, now thinking back on it, I'm not too proud of, but I had to do what I had to do. The teacher started asking us what happened. Why were you guys fighting? Why is Jerry hurt? So basically, since the teacher's there, I made this split-second decision in my mind. I'm like, here's how he started it. This is what he did. And I went up to Tom and I sucker hit him. In my video, when I teased this, I said a sucker punch. That's not the exact right thing. It was more like, I just, little kids, right? So in front of the teacher, to demonstrate what Tom did to start the fight, I did the move on him. I was trying to do like a punch, but instead it just came out like a big, gigantic shove. And I hit Tom right here, and Tom went flying. He wasn't prepared, right? He let his guard down because the teacher's there. He didn't expect Jerry would sucker hit him. So Tom went flying, and the teacher immediately started yelling at me, telling me to stop and asking Tom if he's okay. But the funny thing is, I didn't get in trouble because obviously when the teacher came to stop it, she could tell that Tom was beating me up. So I guess the teacher in her mind, sorry, not a teacher, like a supervisor, right? Playground supervisor, again, in a school. In her mind, she's like, oh yeah, well, I guess that evens it out. That's how it was back in the day, if you guys remember. Certain people, if you went to certain schools, and let's say someone hit you, you told the teacher, you know what the teacher would say? The teacher would be like, hit him back, right? That's how it was back in the day. Tom actually started crying after I sucker hit him, and he went flying. I guess it evened it out, even though objectively he won the fight, right? But my last sucker hit kind of evened it out. Again, I'm not proud of this, but the lesson to this is it's never over, right? You start something, sometimes it might escalate until you don't want to do it anymore, but that person still wants to fight, right? That's why it's best to use verbal judo, use communication, de-escalate these situations. The way I hit Tom and the way he went flying, he tripped over something and fell. It might have concussed him a little, or he was just so angry because he's never been hit that hard before. But the rest of it, he was like in a daze. And I told Charlie about this. Charlie wasn't there when Tom and I were fighting, but I told Charlie about this. And so Charlie was on my side because Charlie obviously played with us. He knew that Tom was a little violent. So for the rest of the day, we just kept like making fun of Tom and stuff like that. So Charlie had my back that day. Like how it always works, the next day we were cool. But man, the fight between me and Tom was one of those. I knew I was going to get my butt kicked. There was no way I could beat him. But eventually I was like, I have to fight him because he's going to keep messing with me. And I'll either have to fight him like this, or he's going to sucker punch me or push me or do whatever. And then I'm fighting a fight I wasn't as prepared for, right? Like, I wasn't prepared for it, but at least if you decide you're going to face him, you're at least going to swing back. That's my first fight story. The time I sucker punched someone in a fight. Anyways, guys, hope you like this. Leave a comment, press a like, share, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe if you want to hear more of these funny stories. Again, pretty peaceful guy now, and I'm more funny now. I learned to be the funny kid by the middle of elementary school, right? I wasn't the violent kid as much as the funny kid anymore, and that's always how I've been. So I learned to see the fun, the humor in situations. So I don't have too many more of these kind of crazy fight stories, but I do have a lot because I also had a lot of anger in my early childhood. So we have a lot more of these stories. So anyways, guys, in your comment section, let me know, how could I have potentially de-escalated the situation? I could just told the teacher immediately, right? And then the teacher might have told Tom to stop. That could have been a way. Maybe I could have just not come to school that day. I mean, there's ways, but ultimately, you got to get your fighting over with as young as possible so you don't do it in the real world and get in trouble legally. Leave a comment also. Share me your fight stories. Have you ever been sucker punched? Have you sucker punched people? All right, guys, we got a lot more to come.